This is Cruise Radio.
Cruise Radio is brought to you in part by tripinsurance.com. Travel insurance done right by the people who know travel insurance. Get a quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida.
This is
Cruise Radio. Cruise Radio.
Scott just returned from a 10-night cruise aboard Norwegian Pearl. A little different itinerary for this time of year. It was a 10-night med cruise going from Trieste, Italy, down around the boot, and it ended in Rome. He joins us on the line to talk about it. How you doing, Scott?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Certainly. Have so many questions here. I want to kick things off, though, asking, is the temperature the same? You're in the Manhattan area. Is the temp the same in the Med this time of year as New York?
Yeah, roughly. It was like the perfect time to go, I think. It's not as crowded as it is in the summer. So the ports are a little bit emptier, but it's also not freezing. I've done Europe in the winter before, and it can be very snowy and cold, but the Mediterranean, it's a little bit more south. So it was the perfect weather to be there. We were pretty comfortable. There were a couple of days that were even warmer than expected, where we were just in shorts. But most days, like a sweatshirt or a light jacket was fine.
Which leads into my next question, like taking a step back before we get to Pearl, what made you want to take this 10-nighter in the Mediterranean in November?
Yeah. I went with my friend. We were looking for something that had a little bit of like cruise and relaxing type of vacation mindset, as well as seeing some new things. I had spent quite a bit of time in Europe. I did some study abroads there while I was in college. But there were a couple of countries on this itinerary, Slovenia, Montenegro, that I hadn't been to. So it was kind of the mix of those two things that made us say, let's go with this one. The longest cruise we had ever done before was 8 nights. So the idea of 10 was exciting to a little nerve-wracking. It's a long time on one ship, but was exciting as well.
This cruise embarked out of Trieste, which is the cruise port for Venice that NCL uses these days, at least. Did you do any pre-cruise time before the sailing?
Yeah, so we flew in the night before to Venice, and then we got the airport shuttle from the airport of Venice to downtown Venice. It's like 20 minutes. It was really cheap and easy to get that. And then we booked a hotel about like a 5-minute walk from there, because that's also right near the main train station. We got in at like 7 p.m. So we went out to dinner, walked around a little bit. We had both been to Venice before, so we weren't doing a whole lot of touring, but just explored a little bit. And then in the morning, we kind of got up, did a little bit more walking around, exploring, and then we got a train from the main train station in Venice. I think it was like a 12 o'clock train. It took about 2 hours. We got on board. It was almost all filled of people who are going on the Norwegian Pearl. We saw a lot of luggage. A lot of people were talking about cruises and what they were excited about for this trip. So we knew we were in the right place. And it was about 2 hours. It's kind of cool on that train ride. You actually pass a couple of the Italian shipyards. So we actually saw, like, I think it was the Norwegian Aqua. Like we took the train past that. And I think the new Princess ship as well, once we got closer to Trieste. But once we got to Trieste, got off the train. It's like a 20-minute walk or so from the train to the ship. So we explored a little bit for like 30 minutes or so, just the main attractions in Trieste, but not as much there. So then we figured we'd go right to the ship and get on board and start the vacation.
It can be intimidating taking a train in a foreign country. Is it pretty intuitive as far as the process? You know, if you only speak English, how to purchase the tickets?
Yeah, we actually got the train tickets online ahead of time. And what was good about it is we could have changed the train and just got on an earlier one that day if we felt like it. It said it in online and on the ticket. So super easy to just buy that. You don't have to do anything once you get to the station other than just go to the train that you have the ticket for. And we asked like the conductor who was standing by the train just to make sure that that ticket was for the right train. And they said yes. So we got on board. I know Norwegian also does have like a transfer that you can do. My travel agent said that was a pretty expensive. And if we were comfortable doing the train, it was easier to just do that. And then that way we didn't have to like wait on anyone or wait to be in a big group. It was just the train time that we selected.
And how long did it take you to embark from the curb to the ship?
Probably about 5 minutes. Granted, it was later in the day. The ship didn't leave until 8 p.m. and I think we got on board around 4. So it was a little bit later in the day. It wasn't crowded, but we walked right into the security area. There was no line. Walked through security, and then you don't board like the one of the middle decks. You board from the bottom, one of the lower decks. So you just kind of walk right in. But probably about 5 minutes from the time we decided, all right, let's get on board, till the time we were actually on the ship.
Despite boarding on a lower deck, what were your first impressions of Norwegian Pearl?
So it's not as impressive as going right into an atrium or anything. And they take you right to your muster station. You get in the elevator right away, and you can't even control what floor it's going to. There's a crew member there who's pressing the button to bring you to the muster station. So we went right to the muster station, got that out of the way, and then the cabins were ready. So because it was so late. So we just decided to go right over to our cabin. We unpacked. We had already had like lunch and everything earlier in the day, so we weren't in a rush to do that. And then we started exploring and walking around, and then eventually had dinner that night. So easy to just kind of like get everything out of the way and like settle in really quick, I would say.
And, that forced muster drill can be a pain in the butt sometimes. But I mean, sailing out of Miami or Texas, you're always hearing the cruise director saying, all right, there's still 33% of the ship who has not done the muster drill yet. We can't leave until it happens. So not a bad thing, a pain in the butt at first, but glad you do it up front.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think they made like one announcement because I'm sure there were a couple people, and I know there were probably a bunch of people who were staying on from the last cruise too, because there was a sign that said, if new passengers as well as returning passengers. So I'm sure there was some difference there, but I think there was only one announcement we heard about that. Otherwise, pretty much everyone got it out of the way.
So what kind of stateroom did you have for this 10-night cruise, and what were your thoughts throughout the voyage?
Yeah, we had an interior stateroom on deck 10. It was really comfortable. I think a couple years ago, maybe redid the staterooms on the Pearl. They did it really well, like a lot of storage, more storage than I could have expected. The two of us we don't pack a lot. We had like more room than we ever would need, and more room than I feel like I've had on most cruises previously. But the room itself, the bathroom, felt like it was recently renovated, really nice and modern look to it. So we're really happy with the cabin overall. One thing that I did notice being such a long cruise is I did miss having like an ocean view or a balcony. I've done a lot of interiors before, and I'm typically always fine with it. But I think after 10 days, it got to me a little bit to not have that. So every morning, after we'd wake up, I'd get ready. And then while my friend was getting ready, I'd go downstairs to like the outdoor promenade just to get some fresh air while I was waiting, because it was a little stuffy after a while. But the room itself was really nice. And for a 7-night cruise, I think an inside room would have been totally fine.
Let's talk about the food on Norwegian Pearl, and we'll start at the top at the Garden Cafe, the buffet area. So what were your impressions of the food throughout the week, and also how crowded did it get up there?
Yeah, there were like 3 areas of the buffet almost. So there was the main buffet area, and then at the back of the ship, there was also the Great Outdoors that had a small buffet area. And then towards the pool, there was also like a little grill area. I would say it never felt too crowded, but we didn't have any sea days. Every day was a different port. So it wasn't too bad in that sense. The food was fine. Nothing spectacular, nothing bad. There wasn't a huge selection. The Garden Cafe was the main area, but the 2 other areas, the Great Outdoors and the pool grill area, weren't open for very long most days, especially the grill by the pool. So that was open like, I think just like 12 to 3 or something. Like it was just lunchtime. So the grill food was good. We enjoyed that. The buffet did have like a crepe station for dinner, which was kind of nice. We went there a couple of times and the food was fine overall. But nothing spectacular and not a huge selection for the size of ship.
Now, Norwegian really doesn't have like set dining times, or they do have main dining rooms, we'll call them. They have 2 on that ship. So how did the main dining work out for you on this one? Is it basically, are you making a reservation? Are you just popping in? And whatever route you took, how was the food in there?
Kind of go when you want freestyle. So there's the 2 main dining rooms. There were a couple of nights where there was like a 5-minute wait, but you just kind of wait online and then they seat you right away. We never had to like come back or anything like that. The food was pretty good. It was always served hot, which is important. I've been on cruises where that's not the case. I will say the menu, I think, has gotten a little bit smaller over the years. Like most nights, there was like only one rotated option for dessert, and then you could always get ice cream or something. But the menu was a little bit smaller, and some of the staples, like I know they used to have salmon like every night. Now they had flounder every night, so that was a bit of a switch that I wasn't expecting. But the food overall was fine. made its way through the 10 nights. It did get repetitive, as I said, a little bit by the end. There were a couple of dishes that would come back, especially the desserts came back a couple of times. One thing to note is that they have a couple of things that aren't on the menu, but that you can get. So for example, like I got a steak one night and wanted a baked potato with it, but there wasn't a baked potato on the menu. So I asked if I could do that, and they were able to do so easily and get that to me. So the service was really good. They did a great job with that. But the food was a little bit repetitive after a while.
Okay, so outside of the main dining room, any type of specialty dining or complimentary you may have done?
Yeah, so they had two other places. There was an Oceans, which I know is a Norwegian staple. So we did go there a couple of times for lunch. That's the only thing open 24/7 as well, which is an important thing to note because the buffet actually closed at like 9 or 9:30 most nights. So if you're looking for like any snack or anything outside of that, there's nothing to just quickly go and grab. You have to go to Oceans, which is a sit down kind of pub type of place. But the food at Oceans was pretty good. They had some good pretzel bites and nachos that we got a couple of times. And that was really easy for lunch, especially after kind of being out in the morning for a port day and coming back for a late lunch. That made it really easy. And then there was also like an Asian restaurant. I think it was called the Lotus Garden. That was free when we were on board. I think they're actually making that a paid specialty dining place going forward in 2025. But it was free while we were there. So we went there one night for dinner. The food was decent. I think, I live in New York, so I'm close to Chinatown and Flushing. Wasn't quite that level, but the food was decent, and it was nice to change it up a little bit. One thing to note, I don't know if it used to be free breakfast for room service or continental breakfast at least, but none of that was included. So we would have loved, especially on a port day, to get just some pastries or something sent to the room in the morning, but we couldn't do that because we didn't want to pay the extra money, and it wasn't too far to go to the buffet anyway.
As far as entertainment on this 10-night cruise, how was it for y'all through the voyage?
Yeah, I think this was something that we felt was the most disappointing aspect of the cruise. I had been on Norwegian quite a number of times, although it's been a couple of years, but I'm now a gold member. I remember their entertainment being really strong, really good, and this was pretty disappointing. So in the main theater, there were actually only two main production shows over 10 nights, which felt a little bit lackluster, and they were okay, but nothing spectacular. And then in terms of the other theater productions that they did, they had a couple of other guest performers. They had like a singer who did two shows, a rock violinist who did two shows, a magician who did two shows, and all of those were fine, but they each did two shows. So if you didn't like the first one, so for example, we went to the violinist and she was fine. It was entertaining for one night, but we didn't want to go back. That left us with another night later in the cruise where there wasn't as much going on. And then outside of the main theater, the Norwegian Pearl, the design is a little bit different than I had remembered. I had been on the Gem many years ago, and there's really only two venues that have like live music going on at night. There's the Atrium, and then there's, I think it's called Bar City, where there's a bunch of bars by there. And so the musicians and the performers were good, but there were only those two options during the evening. So I've been on Carnival a little bit more of late, and definitely compared to Carnival, it felt like they had a lot less going on in the evening once we were back on board.
What about the smoke situation in and around the casino?
Yeah, it was definitely a bit smoky. It didn't get the smoke didn't get outside of the casino, so it was just really if you had to walk through it that it was a bit smoky. And because this was such a port-intensive cruise, the casino often didn't open until a little bit later in the evening, so that wasn't too much of an issue. One thing to note about the casino, though, because it was port-intensive and some of the ports were late nights, they actually, the last night of the cruise, the casino and the shops never opened because we left our final port so late, and I guess we were never leaving Italian waters or something. So I definitely saw some people try to go to the casino the last night to kind of finish gambling or even probably get some money from the cashier, and weren't able to do so because of that.
Yeah, that's something both the cruise line and passengers hate.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you anyways. Sea days or transiting between ports for crowds and congestion?
Yeah, we actually didn't have any sea days on this cruise.
Okay.
There were a couple of like mornings, or one morning in particular where it was a little bit of a later port. Wasn't bad in terms of the crowds or anything. The ship does have like a golf booth or net or whatever that's called, chess, checkerboard, ping pong, all those things. So it was kind of nice to be able to use those during those mornings. I don't know if they would have kept us going the rest of the day if we had a full sea day. And it wasn't quite swimming weather for the most part. But it kept us going for the couple of hours before we got into port.
A lot of ports of call on this one then. So you leave Trieste. What was your first port of call? And give us your highlight.
So we started in Koper, Slovenia. That was my first time in Slovenia, so that was really exciting. Koper is right on the water. Obviously, it's the port. But the main attractions in Slovenia, I would say, are Lake Bled and Ljubljana, which is the capital there. So we did an excursion through Norwegian that went to both of those. I will say it gives you a lot of time on a bus when you do that. Each of them are about an hour and a half away, so about half of our excursion was spent on a bus. Which was the only disappointing part of that. I think if I were to do it again, I probably would have just done the time on your own in Ljubljana, the capital, and skipped Lake Bled. Personally, I like walking around a city a little bit more, and it's a small, walkable, easy city. So would have rather done that because we only ended up with about 45 minutes in each of those two destinations because it was so much time on a bus. Then the next day we were in Split, Croatia. This was the only day they had some issues with the excursions. So we had an excursion booked to one of the waterfalls in Croatia, one of the waterfalls at a national park. But this was the only day that there was a line actually out of the theater to get the excursion. And they ended up calling our excursion while we weren't yet in the theater. We were still waiting online, and so we didn't hear it. So when we got to the front, they had already left without us, sadly. And Norwegian, to their credit, right away was like, this is on us. This is our fault completely. We're going to give you a refund, or we can switch you to another tour, whatever you want. So we ended up just taking the refund and then going out and walking around in the city. I have done a lot of like free walking tours in Europe. So we ended up booking one of those last minute and doing that. Split's a great city. It was just a little bit disappointing to not be able to do that excursion because that was something that was high on my list.
Split is so amazing. That is a shame. At least did you get to go over to, what was it, Diocletian's Palace?
Exactly. Yes. Split's a great city and an easy city to just do kind of on your own without an excursion. So definitely we were able to make that work. I had just been there before, which was why I was hoping to do that excursion. But my friend who was with me had never been there, and he thoroughly enjoyed just being able to explore the city itself.
That's awesome. What was up next?
Yeah, so after that, we did another day in Croatia. We were in Dubrovnik. I had actually never been to Dubrovnik, and that was probably like one of the highlights of the cruise for me. Really wonderful city. We did another kind of free walking tour there. We also walked the walls of the city and just really had a lovely day exploring there. I will say the port is a little bit further away from the main city, but the cruise line offered a bus that you could pay a little bit extra for to go back and forth throughout the day. So we did that, and then the bus took us right to the edge of the walls and then back at the end of the day to the ship. But really wonderful city. Would definitely recommend to anyone to go visit Dubrovnik one day.
Love it. And then after Dubrovnik?
Then we were in Kotor, Montenegro. Wasn't the easiest start to the day. They had some tender issues. It turned out there were a couple of different stories that Norwegian gave us. One of them was that we were in the further location than where they normally get to drop anchor. And so the tender took 30 minutes each way. Then they also said that the city didn't let them use as many of their own tenders. So there wasn't as many that they could run. So we actually didn't get off the ship until about 12:30, even though we were there at 8:30 in the morning. And we weren't on like that late of a tender. It just took them about 2 tenders an hour that they were getting off. So it took a really long time, which was a bit disappointing. We ended up with about 3.5 hours in Kotor itself. It is a beautiful city. And we ended up walking to there's like a hill there that you can walk to the top and get a view of a church, which is really cool. And then just walking around the town is also really cool. Just would have liked a little bit more time. And then what no one really realized is that same issue to get off the ship was going to be the same issue to get back on the ship. So we had to be back online to get on the ship at about 4:00, and we didn't end up getting back on board until about 6:30. And there were a lot of angry people. We had to stand there and wait, and there was no bathrooms, no water, just standing, not a lot of benches. We were fine, but definitely a lot of people complaining around us, and not much communication or apology from the cruise line from that. So the next day we were in Greece. So we were in Olympia, or Katakolon is the port. We didn't end up booking an excursion to the ruins. Instead, we figured we'll try and get something once we get off the ship, which was the right call. As soon as we walked off, there were some buses and vendors offering to fill up a bus and take you to the ruins for significantly cheaper. I think it was like $15 or something per person. So we did that. Ended up getting brought over to the ruin area. It's about a 5-minute walk from where the bus dropped us off, and then kind of did our own self tour. There's a lot of signs there, so we didn't feel like we needed a tour guide or anything. And then it brought us back to Katakolon. There's not really much in the port area itself. It's like one street, but had some Greek food, and then got back on the ship. That was actually the day that it was the sunniest, so that's when we wore shorts. So we actually were able to swim a little bit. Turns out the pools are heated, at least on that ship. And so we were actually able to hang out and swim for a little bit that afternoon once we were back on board.
Nice. What was up next?
The next day we were in Corfu. I had been to Corfu before and actually wasn't feeling great that day. So pretty much stayed on the ship and just kind of relaxed. But the day after that, we were in Italy. So that day we were in Messina in Sicily, which was really cool. We got off the ship. We had plans to go to Taormina, which is about a 45-minute train ride away. But when we got off the ship, there were some taxi drivers that were looking to get groups of people to do a taxi tour to Taormina. And there was actually a group of 3 people, and they were looking for 2 more people to get in the taxi to make the price a little bit lower. So we figured we might as well just join that, make it a little bit easier than having to deal with the train. So we did that. I think it was like €35 a person, and the taxi driver drove us to Taormina. Beautiful views as you drive along on the coast there. Once you get to Taormina, it's really just a beautiful, like, touristy beach city. So just walked around for a while. There's a really nice amphitheater to go and see, some ruins as well. And then the taxi picked us up at a set time and brought us back to Messina, and we just kind of walked around the port a little bit before the end of the day. But that's also the Strait of Messina, so it was a really cool view to be able to look across and see the mainland of Italy from there, from Sicily.
So you're making your way around the boot of Italy. What was your next port of call?
Yeah, so we had 2 more. The next one, we were in Naples, which we were planning to not go to Pompeii because both of us had been there before. But I don't know if we got on the wrong train. We were told to get on a certain train, but the train ended up in Pompeii. So once we were there, we figured, all right, we're here. We don't want to deal with any more getting around. So we figured we'd just stay in Pompeii. So we explored Pompeii a little bit, which was a lot of fun. And then kind of just took that train back to Naples, and then walked back to the ship from there. I will say, for anyone who's doing that on your own and not through an excursion, it's definitely really easy to do it. It is about a 30-minute walk from the ship to the train station. So just be mindful of time, and especially if you're not going during peak summer season, the trains aren't running as frequently, although they are still very crowded. So just make sure you give yourself plenty of time to get to and from Pompeii, but definitely a very easy day trip to do on your own without an excursion. And then our final day, we were in Livorno, which is in Tuscany. So we did another excursion that day to Volterra, which is a hilltop town in Tuscany, which was really pretty. The excursion then went to like a sheep farm that we thought was going to be a little bit more of like hanging out with sheep, seeing how they do the farming aspect. It turned out that wasn't really the case. Instead, they were just kind of giving us lunch, which I think would have been fine if that's what we were expecting, but we were expecting a little bit more time hanging out with the sheep. So that was our day in Livorno. Another tour that did take a lot of time on the bus to get to and from, about an hour and a half each way. And then the one downside of Livorno is if you're not doing an excursion, there's nothing really in the port. It becomes a little dull once you get back because there's nothing else that you can go and just walk around and do on your own right there. You're pretty much stuck on the ship at that point.
Yeah, gotcha. And then your final port was just your debark in the port for Rome?
Yes. Then we were in Civitavecchia, which was really easy to get off the ship. I probably should have realized it, but didn't. But since we left from Italy and got back to Italy and never left the EU there, we didn't have to go through customs. So once you get off the ship, you just kind of walk right out. So that was really easy. And then there's a shuttle for free that goes from the ship to the right outside of the port area there. And then we had prearranged for bus company to get us from the port directly to the airport. So it was pretty easy to get from the ship to the airport that last day.
I'm very curious of the port crowds on this voyage because I've never sailed that area in November or December. Been to Venice in December last year, I believe, and it was so nice. But I'm curious, were the ports empty?
Yeah, definitely. It was not nearly as crowded as I think it would have been. Some of the ports I think are typically only one ship anyway. Like I think Slovenia, there weren't any other places for another ship to be. But places like Naples and Livorno, especially those two Italian ones that do get a lot of ships. I think Dubrovnik as well. Corfu probably definitely would have had many more ships at another time of year. There were, I think, 1 or 2 days where there was like a Holland America and an MSC ship nearby, but most of the days we were the only ship in port, which was kind of nice and made it feel a little bit more authentic and also not too crowded. It wasn't what you think of, especially those 2 days in Greece. A lot of people think of Greece as really crowded. You get off at Santorini and there's like 8 ships there. It wasn't anything like that.
You get off the ship and you're heading to the Rome airport. Did you have any second thoughts thinking, you know what, maybe we should have spent a day post-cruise in Rome before we fly back to New York?
Yeah, I love cruises. They're one of my favorite things in the world. But I think 10 nights I learned was a little bit too much for me. And so we got off the ship and we were both very much ready to get on that plane and come back. We did have work the next day, so it would have been nice to maybe give us one day once we got back to just kind of settle back in. But I don't think we needed any more time in Rome itself.
Fair enough. Any first time tips to offer someone sailing a Mediterranean itinerary?
Yeah, a couple things about the Med. Definitely know yourself and know what you're trying to get out of the ship. If you're looking for something that's just like that cruise experience and a cruise feel, probably don't do a Mediterranean, like more port intensive cruise. I'd suggest just sticking to the Caribbean. Versus if you're looking for something that is going to be much more exploring and excursions and things like that, then a Med cruise could work. And just also know if you're the type of person who might need a sea day or two to lay at the pool and relax. 10 days with no sea days can be a lot and can be a little exhausting. So just make sure that you're booking the right itinerary for yourself. And if you've never done something like that, maybe try a 7-night to start. And then in terms of the ship itself, if you're looking to do the thermal suite, you can definitely negotiate with them. I ended up negotiating down the price a little bit. Basically, you just go and see if they can do anything better and feel free to like walk away and then come back. And typically the manager is able to do something a little bit and get you a little bit of a better deal. Outside of that, Norwegian itself, they do charge for a lot of things. So just be aware of that, especially like that day in Dubrovnik, having to pay for the bus to and from, the 7-8 minute drive to and from the ship to the main city. I think other lines probably include that and Norwegian didn't. So just know what you're getting into with Norwegian.
Looking back, what was the biggest highlight of this cruise?
I think getting to go to Slovenia and to Montenegro, those were countries I hadn't been to. That was really exciting. And then Dubrovnik, everyone had told me that was a wonderful city in Croatia. And that it definitely lived up to the expectation we had. And then I would also say Messina in Sicily was something that I didn't have high expectations for. I didn't really know what we would do, but I really loved that. The landscape was beautiful and just had a really good, enjoyable day there.
Your final thoughts of Norwegian Pearl?
The ship itself is really well kept. As I said, I think they did a little bit of a refurbishment a couple of years ago, and it definitely felt not like a 20-year-old ship or however old it is. It's in really good condition. And definitely had an enjoyable time on board. I think the one downside was some of the entertainment from the ship itself, but the crew was really fantastic. And the ship was really nice to just be on and had some nice facilities on board as well. So definitely enjoyed the ship itself.
We've been talking with Scott about his 10-night cruise on Norwegian Pearl in the Mediterranean. Scott, thank you so much for stopping by, my friend. I sure appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Just back from a cruise? Let's talk about it. Email Doug at cruiseradio.net.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,